You could have literally changed 7 different people's lives. You could have made 7 superstars. You could have showed the world 7 different unique people, and it could have been a movie that would have been empowering. And now, how I personally feel is like what I said in that clip: you make them CGI. It's almost saying that being a little person or being a dwarf or being someone with a disability is bad. So we can't even use, they're not talented enough, or they're not capable of doing these roles. So we had to use CGI.
Renegade Online.
Disney is one of these companies out there in Hollywood that wants to pretend as if it is woke and virtuous and everything on down the line. And Disney, as we talked about in the intro, in the monologue, I said, Peter Dinklage, how much damage did this guy do to a lot of his fellow actors out there? And this came out today. I caught this as I got home, and I saw this about 30 minutes before we started the show. And I reached out to our friend that was in this. I had no idea this was out there. So everybody take a look, because this is part of the problem with this movie from all angles, I think, in my opinion, as to why this just failed.
And there's another controversy. In the movie, the 7 dwarfs were created with CGI effects.
Little people got big dreams,
These actors say they should have been real.
It's very disappointing that Snow White chose to not include us, especially when they're trying to say that this movie is supposed to be woke and different. It's almost like you're saying to be a little person is bad, so that's why we had to make them our cartoon. It could have created more opportunities for other people.
We'll be back with more Inside Edition after this.
Well, there you have it. And that young lady in that video was, of course, somebody that I think a lot of our fans out there in the YouTube audience are familiar with. You've seen her on a number of shows out there. She's always hanging out with Chrissy Mayer. I'm sorry, Lyla, it's Chrissy. We love Chrissy, but, you sometimes you got to slum it sometimes. Lila Hart joining us now.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you so much for playing that clip and discussing Snow White. I am just so upset that they even took out the 7 dwarfs from the title of the movie.
Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't even think of that.
This is just it. And there is so much to discuss on how wrong this movie was. Lyla, my chat was incredibly masochistic, and they sent me a lot of money to force me to go watch this movie Thursday night, which I had to do. This was a movie that looked like it was forced together from 2 or 3 different rewrites, 2 or 3 different shoots. Wow. And even one of the most ridiculous things about this movie is that we were told that they couldn't hire little people because doing the 7 dwarfs would be offensive to little people, which I didn't understand at all. And then at the same time, one of the 7 bandits that we had was actually a little person in the same scene as the CGI 7 dwarves that Disney swore up and down that they had to animate to make them look like they wanted to make them look. This is baffling to me. Lyla, what the hell happened here?
It is absolutely disappointing that they chose to use CGI than actual little person actors, okay? Because for me, you could have literally changed 7 different people's lives. You could have made 7 superstars. You could have showed the world 7 different unique people, and it could have been a movie that would have been empowering. And now, how I personally feel is like what I said in that clip: you make them CGI. It's almost saying that being a little person or being a dwarf or being someone with a disability is bad. So we can't even use, they're not talented enough, or they're not capable of doing these roles. So we had to use CGI. And then on top of that, if you're going to make CGI, I mean, the least you could do is have the voice actors be little persons, They
had one, Martin Kleba. That was it. They had one little person in that whole cast of 7 dwarves, and he played Grumpy.
Well, and Lyla, I was literally thinking watching the movie, you might have had your next Warwick Davis, from this movie.
Yes. Absolutely. And it's okay, if you wanted to make it more woke or different, you could have, the 7 little dwarfs didn't all have to be men. You could have made a they them little dwarf. You could have made a woman little dwarf. You know what I mean? But here's real people.
Right up Disney's alley with the they thems. Yeah.
Speaking of Warwick Davis, we had a chance to talk with Warwick Davis, and he had said that he wished Disney had reached out to him at least to get his thoughts on this versus Peter Dinklage. Lyla, who should Hollywood be listening to, and who are they listening to that's causing them to exclude in the name of inclusion?
I mean, they're clearly listening to a bunch of idiots, okay, and not the people who are making videos like you guys that are saying, hey, these are the kind of movies we want to watch. And you know what? It's great that this actually is going to be a fail at the box office, so that hopefully Hollywood can wake up and say, hey, the people don't want this. And the thing I find so crazy is, for a film that was trying to be, oh, we're so progressive and we're so different, you actually regress, because in 1937 they used real people in for all these movies, and you saw it slowly start to happen when they did that movie. What was the movie where they used one little person but they made like multiple copies of him instead of hiring hundreds of little people? Do you know what I'm talking about? Why can't I think of the name?
No.
I don't know. The chat will probably get it.
The Willy Wonka. The Willy Wonka.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Yeah.
Yes, they made one Oompa Loompa, and at least he got the role. But again, you could have used hundreds of little people. And I feel, this is how I feel, the more that we actually see little person actors on screen, and hey, for me, I'm like, little person, let's make the midget word great again, okay? I call myself the baddest midget, bitch. So I'm the spine of it for the
This is why,
baddie.
wait, Lyla, this is why Hollywood won't listen to you. It's not because of the hat you're wearing. It's because of the hat that's just behind your left shoulder there. The Trump one.
Oh, Trump.
Yeah.
This one
Yeah.
says Trump because I kind of like freedom and shit. Okay, that's what this one. Here's how I feel about it. The more that we would actually have little person actors on screens, or whatever you prefer to be called, it's a way to make it normalized and cool. And I am disappointed in Peter Dinklage and what he had to say. I'm like, you don't speak for all of us, bro. Okay. And it's almost like you pulled up the short ladder behind you and was like, y'all can't come up here. I'm going to pull this ladder up, and too bad for you. And it's like, that's not right. And it's very interesting because even with myself, I became a stand-up comedian because when I first moved out to Los Angeles, I had headshots. And as the audience here, they can't even really tell, right? Like I'm 4'6", but behind a screen, I look a lot larger. But I would send in my headshot. I'd always get into the audition and I'd walk in, and I felt like I was being discriminated against because of my size. So I became a stand-up comedian so that I could have Hollywood maybe like write roles for me. And then now you are taking away roles for people that were literally written for them. It makes no sense.
It really doesn't. And it seems like, from everything I've seen, I mean, I've watched some of your bits, like some of the videos you post. You've had a great career as a stand-up comic, and
Thank you.
I mean, like I've watched some of your stuff, like I crack up laughing. It's truly genuinely brilliant, and I think it's because you're very honest and genuine, and I think that's what's missing from a lot of comedy these days, is that people want to be so cautious about, oh, we can't offend this group, or we can't offend that group, or it's like, no, wait, that's what comedy used to be. And I think the same problem, Lyla, holds true. Would you agree? I mean, with Hollywood in general, they're so afraid to make an honest movie anymore and do a real story. And I think this is why Snow White is failing, because they felt like, oh, we've got to make this for modern audiences, right? Which never seemed to materialize. They have to make this for people that largely don't exist. And like I brought up in the monologue, I think the biggest problem with this movie is that, as a married man of more than 2 decades, I got 2 teenage daughters. Mm-hmm. They're not into this. They look at this and they go, no, I want to see a movie about true love. My oldest daughter in college is like, I'd rather go watch anime. She's a huge anime fan. She does art and graphic design in college. And it's like, I'd rather go watch the anime stories because they still understand how to make a romance. And Disney apparently doesn't. That's her attitude right now.
Another thing too, it's like Disney, Hollywood, are they not like watching TikTok and actually seeing that there's a lot of like younger influencers who have dwarfism or little or different that are like popping off? People want to see different. And I find it so offensive that you use CGI. It's absolutely horrible. And then the CGI sucks. Doesn't even look good. You make the dwarves, they've got big heads and big hands. hands. They look strange. They don't even look like the right kind of dwarfs.
Lila, they were kind of frightening looking.
Yes. So now you're going to scare people, and you're like, you know what? The dwarfs are actually scary things.
It's basically what happened with clowns years ago. Like everybody thought, like where clowns were made to be scary, and then like now they are. And the people that would play clowns got upset years ago because everybody has this stigma. I think you might be right. This might be sort of the same thing. I thought overall the movie was just bad. I mean, from top to bottom. And I'm not picking on it strictly from a technical standpoint, from a story writing standpoint, from a directing standpoint, from an acting standpoint. This movie was genuinely awful. This was a swing and a miss, it seems like, on every single possible level. And I made a post a couple of days ago now, I think 2 days ago. It now has over 5 million views on X, which is the biggest thing I've ever posted on there. Just saying that, Disney said they did this because they had to make the dwarves look like they wanted to. Meanwhile, Peter Jackson did this 25 years ago with Lord of the Rings. And granted, he didn't even use little people, but he used real people, even with a forced perspective. I mean, Snow White, if anything, should be the ideal situation where you would actually use little people or dwarf actors out there to play this, because the stylism of the original Snow White lends itself so easily to this. They weren't supposed to be battle-hardened warriors like in Tolkien's novel. These are just supposed to be like normal folks working in a mine. And Disney said, "Oh, well, we pissed Peter Dinklage off."
Do you think they didn't ask him, so he got mad and said that, like, that he wasn't offered a role?
Well, that's possible. I hadn't thought of that before, but that is possible.
I mean, well, like what Pro brought up earlier about Warwick Davis. Warwick Davis has been very attached to Disney and Disney adjacent studios now for many, many years.
The way we phrased that question to Warwick when we had the opportunity to speak with him was, he has a son, Harrison, and his son Harrison is of shorter stature, and he's not getting the opportunity for this role. And instead, what we're getting is they're creating these characters. I mean, Dopey looks like Conan O'Brien, and Alfred E. Newman had a mutant Rankin Bass baby. I mean, that's what's happening right now, and nobody wants this crap.
I think that Peter Dinklage, he wants to be viewed as a regular person, and he doesn't want his short stature to be, part of why he was chosen for roles. And see, I'm on the opposite side of that. I'm like, I want to embrace the fact that I was born with this body, and I want to embrace the fact that here's how it is. I see it being hired for little people roles or whatever, no different than hiring a beautiful girl that you want for bottle service, or a beautiful model that you want walking in Paris Fashion Week, right? So it's like, why can't I embrace the fact that I was born at 4'6" and I call myself the spina bifida baddie? Why can't I embrace that and be proud of that and be like, you know what, this was the body that God gave me, and I'm perfect for this role, and I am not like everybody else, and that's actually totally okay. And I don't want to be viewed like I'm like everybody else. I want to be viewed like I'm a magical, mythical, extra, amazing creature. So give me the role, damn it.
Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.